Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Lucid, and I'm joined once again by arguably the world's best Dominions player, Sai.
This is Sai, and I'm very arguably
so,
with big news.
what happened last episode? Gonna give us
So, yeah. So last episode, the big news was that Arco basically failed their IRL morale check and started giving up after losing 22 mages to Xibalba's big breakout attempt with the weapons of sharpness Oslotls, and that basically smashed their northern army, which was not equipped to handle either the weapons of sharpness or the foul vapors, which basically ensured that even if they had been able to withstand the initial Oslotl charge, that they still would have eventually ticked out and died, making it at best a Pyrrhic victory, and excuse me, ensuring that their northern army was destroyed. Their southern army, meanwhile, is pinned inside of Joman, leaving only one army that's currently out on the field near their border with Gath. And after seeing those losses, Arco essentially invited Vaettiheim and Tianchi to start taking their territory. So we can see those attack flags going off this turn now as well.
right. Though we didn't know that last episode, they did let people know because the first time they're telling us is actually this turn,
Oh, okay.
which we'll start with this message. Well, I suppose I can call him a two-trick Aussie player now. And this is of course a pun, not a pun, but he had, I think as is his way, had named his tarts like a one-trick Aussie player. And yeah, so that's kind of funny. That's 100% unmindful, San and I. We spent the last 3 days thinking about a pan bone grinding drop and how to counter it, and it completely missed the potential foul vapors play. Also, we knew we were behind what we see as the game leader, TNG, Panarethia, and increasingly Gath. We knew we had to make the risky decision to go after Xibalba while 200 Sacreds were trapped in that fort, or try to knock him out now so we could concentrate on Gath and Arethia directly afterwards. Clearly a mistake of planning, and good for Xibalba on his play, and poor on us for not anticipating foul vapors plus rigor. That wasn't actually what decided the battle, though. It
Yeah, it was
was,
mostly the weapons of sharpness guys just shooting through his, I should say front line, but it's more like the back line that was surrounding his mages. What
yeah,
you'd call the hard candy shell.
right,
They just threw it too quickly.
yeah. Which is that's the problem with Aussies, right? Is that they kill things so goddamn quickly. It's hard. Like what? And it's the critical mass thing. Like 50 Aussies you can deal with. But once you get 200 or 300 Aussies, it's just they kill your stuff, especially with weapons of sharpness on them. They kill your stuff so fast that you don't really have time to do much. It's a problem. And he's commenting here on the Construction 7 research. Really? Question mark? What does TIL mean? I forget.
Today I learned.
Today I learned, yeah. So this was significant because it was more research than we thought Xibalba had as omniscience. So clearly Arco was surprised as well.
Yeah, I mean, he had the same graph that we did in terms of the research graph.
Right. This turn, I've told TNG and Vaettiheim that I'm casting Wrath of God. They've said our nap is invalid. All good. Instead, I'm going to dispel Earthblood Deepwell on the way with my pearls. Okay, that's interesting. So I assumed I think I've read this message before and I misread it. The first time I read it, I thought that he let them vulture him. He invalidated their nap. But apparently what he's saying here is that he told TNG and Vaettiheim that he's casting Wrath of God, and they said that invalidates the non-aggression pact.
The impression that I got was actually that he sent a nap ending message to Vaettiheim as well. I don't know about TNG's perspective in particular,
Right.
but to Vaettiheim, he very explicitly ended the nap and said, "Come, vulture."
Okay. All good. Instead, I'm going to so he's not going to cast Wrath of God. Instead, I'm going to dispel Earthblood Deepwell on the way out with my pearls. Vaettiheim and TNG have been the most reasonable, so I'm going to give them a bit of assistance on the way out. I'm going to Deathball against Xibalba and Gath, this time with some Poison Ward. I promise it makes for entertaining YouTubes.
Yeah, so instead of casting Wrath of God, he dispelled the Earthblood Deepwell.
Right. And that happened this turn. I believe it was successful because Earthblood Deepwell is no more.
Yeah, and that's very significant in terms of Vaettiheim in particular, because Wrath of God is really bad for those low HP Veti.
Right.
Like, you lose a lot of mages while that spell is.
Yeah. I'll comment on this too. I really don't like it when a position 1 player kind of rolls over and dies, and he's not like hitting in turn, right? He's going to march his armies out and fight, but it's kind of like he's still is in a winnable position. Like, you could take this position and win the game. It's going to be hard with Diplo falling apart, like with all the Diplo groundwork he's laid for this game. It's going to be much harder for this player to turn it around, because like TNG's planning on going on them, and when that happens, he's really in trouble. But it's not all the, we were talking about it last episode. All you really have to do is get Gath to peace out with you, and then maybe make TNG scared of getting too big. And you kind of are in like a 1v1 with Xibalba, which I think is not horrible for the game state, especially if you barely win that. So,
Yeah. I mean, no one else is really fighting him. Like, Erythia has essentially been beaten down out of being able to contribute significantly to the war. So it
Right.
really is just Gath and Xibalba at this point.
Right.
Until he invited TNG and vaettiheim into his stuff.
And the main problem is he doesn't have a northern army to deal with Xibalba, but that can be remedied by Gateway and by piecing out with Gath. So I think it's totally a playable position. I really don't like... It's one thing when you're like a small nation, and, Arco's on his way to becoming an increasingly smaller nation, but it's like, it really sucks when a big player like rages into one player and gives his land for free to somebody else. So this is going to, in my opinion, lower the quality of the rest of the game, just because it's kind of like arbitrary throws, but there's nothing we can really do about it. Anyway, this also is Dominions. This sort of thing does happen time to time. But
yeah, I would say it's less of a throw and more of a failed morale check, where because he very nearly gave up when Erythia first attacked him, just by looking at the tech disparity that was there.
Right.
She was like, "Oh, woe is me! I'm going to die to this guy." And then he went and saw, "Oh, actually, Erythia's armies are really vulnerable. I can go kill these things." So he did, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then he went and did that, and then now he's like, "Oh, I lost this army, and everyone hates me because." And he knows that because of the big coalition that he tried to organize against Erythia.
Yeah.
So again, it's just it doesn't have the morale, so to speak, to think that his position is winnable once his snowball got slowed down.
Yeah, and that really is, there's kind of like a subculture in Dominions, and all the vets will know various people from this subculture, but it's like you play really aggressively, you do very little diplomacy, and you just fight and click into people, and you're like snowballing like crazy. And the second your snowball gets like a major interruption, you just roll over and die and start a new game. And there's whole servers or whole games where most of the players in it are playing like this. And you kind of just get like, you have to play super aggressive. You take a super greedy build if you're playing in one of those games. And then just if you're the one that snowballs hard enough, you win. It's not really my personal favorite, but it kind of goes with this. I don't know if that's where this player's from or anything, but I'm just disappointed because I think this is not only can this position survive to the end of the game, I think this position can still win the game. So
yeah, I agree. I think that it's still a viable slot if he had the fortitude to play it out. But it's definitely a very hard slot, and it's also one which player himself is going to have more significant issues than just that morale issue because of the diplomatic situation in which he put himself, where he functionally can't maintain alliances at this point.
Right.
So,
right.
Nation-wise, I think it's a viable position, but considering the whole, grand strategy of the game and relationships with the other players, I don't think that this Arco is a viable position anymore.
I think it depends, right? It really depends on TNG. So we know TNG is planning on attacking them. We also know TNG needs to snowball. But all he really needs to do is get one player to say, TNG, you're already position 1. If you eat some of Arco, we're going to have issues. And that player could be like Pan, for example, or something like that. If one player says that, then TNG isn't going to want to probably do that. But this is like super hypothetical. But
yeah.
if they can just keep TNG out of the war, they can even say, TNG, look, let us fight Xibalba if our position isn't, like, we're clearly not going to win the war tidily anymore, right? And if we are going to lose, we'll let you vulture a lot of our lands, but we'll do as much damage to Xibalba as we can on our way out. Otherwise, we'll, spend a lot of our effort fighting you. TNG, especially like having that lich with bone grinding come and mess with these guys on the capital. Like TNG, I mean, Arco has a lot of leverage to potentially fuck up, like make this very painful for TNG to come in here and fight. If I was given the option, somebody's offering to throw themselves into Xibalba for me, and even though they're probably, they have a very good chance of losing that war. And then if they do lose, they're going to give me free spoils. I don't know. That's an offer I'd consider. I'm not sure I would take it.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I think that you're looking at it from a very different perspective from Arco's player, though.
Yeah.
In that he doesn't think that he is in a position to make those deals at this point.
Yeah. Not true. It's actually kind of funny to get. I don't want to draw at the end of World War II, Hitler didn't think he could do diplomacy anymore because he had burned so many bridges, and he had violated a lot of the agreements he had made. But usually, I mean, you could have just had somebody else do it. Like maybe he's like, I need, if things have gone bad, I need to bring in another player. They're going to be the head. I'm just going to do some advice on tactical stuff. Just having a cheery new face on the Arco position might have given them just enough diplomatic credit that they could have, kept the wheels on.
Very, very meta game.
Yeah, I know, but it's been done. I mean, yeah. Okay, let's keep going. So, message here from Pythium. Hey, Lucid, we will be dead soon. I didn't say hey, Sai. How rude.
Well, you're the primary caster. So
Okay.
Makes sense.
Advantage of being attacked by 4 to 5 nations is a quick end. That's the truth. Big shout out to my 2 Hydras. They've given me lots of great ideas and really helped me learn more about the game. Tip tap to Talajnaj, I don't know how you say that, in Girth. Great to play a game with some really good players. I've learned a lot, I've learned a lot just watching people play. Too bad we could not make it into the proper late game. Thanks for the invite. Hope to see you again next year. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and they lost their one big Sally out already, I believe.
Yeah, I think things are on the downhill slope for them now, but I mean, they've opened my eyes to some of the ways that the gem baiting system can be abused, and their tactical movement this game, as we've talked about, kind of ad nauseum at this point, has been great. Just probably a little bit to work on the grand strategy level, but this was really fun to watch. I've pretty much been always excited to see the Pythium part of the game, so very appreciative for them for playing in the finals. TNG, twice more mage who was sent to Djembe Pythium's cap before the Thug Squad hit it, got a death path. Task failed successfully. I think he got hit by an air elemental, if I recall.
And that's now a Wailing Winds caster. Very cool.
Yeah. A magic phase Wailing Winds caster. Okay, another message from Demosthenes. In a surprising turn of events, Arco asked both us and Vetti to start vulturing them. Okay, so he did ask. It wasn't like they ended their non-aggression pact with him, like. After their big defeat against Xibalba. Given Arco's size, they had more depth, take losses, and keep fighting at this point, but Aussie swarms are hard to fight without critical mass. This is true. And Arco never had as many forts as I'd imagined they would, given their size. Maybe their lands have relatively low gold income for the age. In any case, we will be racing into the lands on our border with Arco to carve out what we can. Arco claims
part of that is actually just how fast Arco expanded. Like, provinces take a little while to cool down from the unrest, especially if they're in enemy dominion. So if you're expanding at like a very, very quick rate, going from one war to the next, then many of your provinces are going to be lower income than they would be after they're a little more settled.
Yeah.
That's kind of why, like, even if you're the same size as someone who has great expansion, if you have like mediocre expansion and a good first war, you're still going to be fairly far behind economically. And that's something that I think that Arco kind of ran into. He was kind of always playing catch up, even while he was winning. So, even as he was crushing Ulm, he deployed all his mages to do that, and he had to catch up in research. And then he went and destroyed Joman, And, he was still catching up, and he was able to catch up very significantly. But like we were able to see on the income graphs that he was far behind Pan, not just from the difference between them in scales, which was, I would say, most of the factor, but also just because of the constant fighting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's often like a 30% swing from like usually the state of provinces, and maybe even more, maybe like 40 or 50% from the state of provinces in when you first conquer it to getting like full scales and dominion in there. Like it's a really big difference. Because when you first conquer it, it's got some unrest, it's got enemy scales, all those things.
Yeah, like if you look at Jomon versus Xibalba, it's like a difference of like 300 versus 500 in terms of the income on that one province.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, Jomon's under siege right
Where
now, so
should I
you can't
look?
really.
Okay.
Yeah, it's under siege right now, so the 213 there that you're seeing is
Yeah.
only like I think 3/4 of the income,
Yeah. Okay.
2/3 or something to that effect. But yeah, it's a very, very significant gap. Even once it's captured, it's going to be worth significantly less than Xibalba's capital.
Right. Okay. Let's make sure we finish this THE message.
Yeah.
Overall, our economy is looking great going into the late mid game, except for a continued dire shortage of Earth gems. As a consequence, having needed to trade for Earth gems to make the 4 hammers we have and lagging in research, I'm not too worried about research. We have most of our key targets, and we may get a breather once Pythium runs out of armies. A near-term priority is getting up a few more temples so that we can take further advance of TC's capital having a ridiculous number of recruitment points to replenish our sacreds. Okay. Message from Pythium. Pangaea. Warp PC canceled the nap with Pythium and Agartha. So these are now the rump states. So Pangaea is moving in. And by the power of friendly talks and crazy ideas, Pythium waived the 3-turn delay, saying they're already dead. Agartha is becoming a sort of ally or vassal state. We'll forge things and attack our enemies. Not sure how this will turn out, but it'll be fun. Okay, this is really funny. The first batch of our forts we launched after piecing out with vaettiheim is finished. We are recruiting a shitload of Centaur sages. 6,500 income, 2,600 upkeep. We're currently debating getting 1 to 2 more forts, the Pythium one or restarting troop recruitment, which can take time with late age Pan. We are swapping the helmet sappers with Vaettiheim every 3 turns to get 3 commander points on key forts. First the cap, and then the golden adept throne, which is next the inner throne. We won't be fighting someone for 3 to 5 turns. We're going to go for construction 8 and try to get some of the nice boosters. Gath is already there. Probably Rethia too. We're also setting things for the long game, trying to cast Eternal Pyre, still lacking the Fire Death booster and an artifact, discussing a Sickle of Death farming with Gath, empowering a Lich in Blood to summon vampires, already have the Earth Power plus 2 death boosters needed, trying to speed things up by buying 100+ slaves under the pretense of forging Blood crosspath boosters.
Yeah, so Pangaea's very clearly thinking about ego, but what's interesting is that he didn't mention Nexus, which to me seems like the ideal late game state for him to be in, given that he's got that big Astral Pretender.
Yeah, that's true.
The other thing that's interesting is if you look at what troops he's recruiting, he's going for Grove Guard over Centaur Cataphracts, which is, so the difference between these two in terms of like what they're going to be doing in the late game is going to vary quite a bit depending on what they're fighting. So against against large opponents, so size 3 and above, both of them have 7 encumbrance, so it's not going to be a huge difference, although the Grove Guard's going to get an additional penalty for being Berserk. The effective attack of a single Grove Guard is the same prior to Berserk, and +3 attack once it is Berserk, and the damage is much, much higher.
Right.
And they also have slightly higher HP. But the Centaur Cataphracts have higher attack density, so their effective attack against most targets is actually higher, and like significantly so, because it's essentially like the first lance of the second guy is at +2 attack, and then the hoof attack is at +4. So it's actually got like a significant attack advantage over the Grove Guard. It also has a shield, and it also has a higher defense score. So in terms of like pure line holding ability, even though the Grove Guard has higher hit points and higher effective protection once it's Berserk, the Centaur Cataphract in most cases is actually going to be tankier. The Grove Guard is better offensively for fighting in things like, Fog Warriors and especially after the big protection buffs goes up, we're talking, Army of Gold
Mhm.
or Mass Marble Warriors, then having a 30 damage base swing is very impactful. But a lot of that is at least partially obviated by weapons of sharpness, which Pangaea can very easily spread across their troops.
Right.
And then, meanwhile, if you're fighting against small enemies, so size 2 guys or vaettiheim in particular, the growth guards are much, much worse offensively because they exhaust themselves so quickly.
Right.
And then that also means that they're much worse at line holding because while you are disrupting the enemy lines, you're disrupting your own line as well. And of course, by getting exhausted, you're also much more vulnerable to armor negating hits. So the difference between these two kind of makes for a big difference in terms of what you're actually going for. By having these growth guard and basically saying, if I'm fighting cavalry, if I'm fighting a big guy, I want my guy to still be able to deal damage. But what you're trading for that is both a much more expensive unit, right? Because 50
Mhm.
gold versus 35 gold, and also a unit that's less good at actually just holding a line. So my preference for playing Pythium is by primarily leaning on your sages. So they're not just your buff mages anymore. Now they
Right.
become, your primary offense from their evocation or just big astral stuff. So a communion of those guys is doing most of the lifting in your fight.
Yeah.
Therefore, what you want from your units is basically to be a front line. And for that purpose, centaur cataphracts are both individually better, and especially when you look at the gold difference, much more efficient.
You know what I think though?
What's that?
I think and this is my guess. I think he's really only looking at one factor, and that's wailing winds. And he's going to be fighting that once Illwinter goes up. Vaettiheim already can do wailing winds with their hero, but once Illwinter goes up, they're going to have Neefel Jarls who can do wailing winds, and then TNG's going to have it.
Yeah, TNG already has it in spades as well,
Right.
that's for sure.
So I think they're looking at like, okay, it doesn't really matter how good at holding the line you are if your shit just runs. And maybe he doesn't want to do Growing Fury or something, but that's what I'm thinking. Because otherwise I agree with you. Otherwise I think Centaur Cataphracts are probably a much better all-around troop for the reasons you listed.
Yeah, you might actually be right. That might be the one thing that he's planning around. And then the other interesting thing about that is that if you are using Growing Fury, and that just instantly sets all those guys berserk anyways.
Right. So in terms of troop movement, he's moving these guys up here. Ran to a really big PD dump from Pythium.
Yeah, he's just cleaning up whatever Pythian provinces he can get his mitts on.
Right. Yeah.
The spoils are increasingly vanishing, though.
Right. Yeah. I'm just looking at, I do think he has what it takes to just end Agartha. Like he puts one of these Sage armies together, and I think he can just delete them. Like Solar Rays, or I don't know. There's still a lot of Umbrals, but
I agree. Yeah, I think that Agartha is where more of the loot lies. But the province that he just took is still 4 gems. That's kind of nice.
yeah, that's super nice. Okay. Oh, and he's on this Pythium for it too. So that's significant. Because this was like very clearly going to be Arethian spoils, and Arethius just pulled back into their shell after their just gobsmacking defeats over here and here.
Yeah, losing those armies essentially defanged them as a nation, I would say, which is
Yeah.
partly why I was almost expecting TNG to go turn on them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what TNG does. I feel like they just have so many options. There was a gym bait here looking at TNG, not gym bait, one of these sneaky. Oh no, this triggered gym use.
Yeah, no, I think this is just a cause as much damage as possible stack. So he is putting up foul vapors, but he's also not trying to retreat them or try to get in under anything. He wants TNG to spend whatever TNG is going to spend while still trying to deal a little bit of damage with that foul vapors.
Yeah, I think this was mostly a gym bait. I wonder if the Serpent Priest here was even scripted to foul vapors. Oh, it looks like it.
Yeah, he cast it, I think.
Did
Unless
he?
he got interrupted. Oh,
Cast
he's
Howl.
doing Howl.
So this was just
Oh.
pure gym bait, I think.
Well,
Yeah.
if it's gem bait, it's much too expensive.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe he thought there were going to be thugs here and the main army wouldn't come yet. That seems
That's
weird because there were thugs on top of this last turn, but there was
Yeah,
also a
it
huge army next door.
Yeah, it might be a fighting what's already there instead of what's coming type of thing.
Yeah, I'll be interested. If you want to put in the comments, Pythium, if you're watching this, what you were thinking with this, because I'm not really sure. Here's the last of the Pythium armies, which is
And then
now
like
pretty much
all mages.
all mages. Yeah,
You
let's
know,
take a look at
that's
it.
really vulnerable too is fires
Flame,
from afar.
yeah, yeah, I was thinking of that too.
Because usually flames from the sky is vastly better because it's hitting like half of everything. But
Mhm.
fires from afar is hitting like a discrete number of units. And if there's only commanders in the province, it can actually be better.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Oh, we got a battle here. So this is the storming of this Pythium throne.
And
And
what's
this,
interesting is that Pythium does have a lot of mages here,
yeah,
but TNG's mages are just better equipped and better researched.
yeah. Let's take a look. So he's got them in little thug squads. Every time
So
I
yeah,
see this
it's
guy, I
going to be
think
Wailing
Debug
Winds
Sensei.
carrying this, I think.
Okay, let's take a look.
Yeah, so those Great Eagles are bodyguarding essentially just to block air elementals.
Right.
I think he should have brought an arrow bait as well, just because there are wall archers, but I guess he's trusting on the skeletons to do that for him.
Yeah, and he hasn't cast Aerofend or anything, which is pretty easy for him to do.
Yeah, I guess he's just not scared of them.
Yeah. I mean, these squads are buffed up pretty high. Well, not a lot of protection, but they've got Moss Body. These guys are ethereal. And
Yeah,
he's
it's just
got,
they're still being targeted.
yeah, it would have been worth it. So now he's got a decent amount of skeletons coming out. He's got a couple of these guys on advance and cast, it looks like. So this is an advance and cast Death Mage. I don't know what he's going to do off script other than Horde of Skeletons. There's a cube
Well, I
back
think,
here. Oh, and most of the mages have already run. So,
I think the idea with having him advance and cast is actually not for his death path thing, but instead for his ability to cast Shatter.
yeah, that's a great point.
Because like basically the only thing that like he could be worried about is something that would turn timer him here, like a golem.
Right.
Um,
That's a great
because
point.
we know that Pythium doesn't have any what's the word, immobiles. But yeah, that, or I think they get the tree summon, the national version.
Oh, yeah.
Hamadryad, that's what it's called. So like there are a couple like nasty surprises that Pythium can leave inside of a fort that Wailing Winds won't just get rid of. In this case, none of them were here, so Wailing Winds by itself was sufficient. But having that advancing cast mage was most likely trying to deal with one or more of those.
Yeah. This is just so brutal. Look at Willy wins.
Yeah, if TNG has deep alteration, I think it's alt 8, he also would get disintegrate,
Ooh,
which is
yeah.
another thing that advancing cast guy could be doing.
Yeah. That would be cool. Oh, let's take a look at Team Cheese research here real quick.
Oh, he's not doing that great. Okay.
Yeah. It's pretty flat. But
Yeah,
like
probably
he said
has
in his
too many-
message, he's kind of got most of the research he needs. Like a lot of, I think too, when you're at that point, I think hopefully we see him play just really aggressive. I mean, we know he's going to eat a bunch of the Arco stuff, but like when you've kind of got most of the tech you're going to get a lot of value out of, that's not the time to sit on your laurels. That's the time to hold your foot down.
Yeah, I think that he would still get a lot of value out of alt 8 and, eventually obviously alt 9.
Right.
But you're right that like the value that you get per RP is much lower once he's already hit Wailing Winds.
Yeah, and he probably has a decent amount of like he Wind of Death is going to be pretty big, and then he's also already got Rain of Stones. Or no, maybe he doesn't have it. They're both 7. So once he gets this 7's going to be important because he can both do these in terms of traps that'll be under the gem threshold, which can make fighting him a real pain in the ass. But
Yeah, depending on who's fighting him and what gear they're using to do so.
right.
But importantly, he is getting that Arco throne. The
Right.
one thing that I was saying that he really needed to get out of Arco. And then from here, I think he's got 4. So he can get all the rest of the thrones that he needs from just Pangaea and Erythia.
Right.
That said, I was also looking at it that Pangaea also can get all the thrones that he needs just from Erythia and TNG. So if either of these two players are contemplating like who they're fighting in terms of thrones required for victory, they both kind of have a very similar path where
Yeah.
they eat Erythia and then they fight each other. And then
Right.
whoever
That's what I
wins
was just thinking.
ends
I
the
was like,
game.
that math doesn't sound very good for Erythia.
Especially now that Erythia's lost all their armies. I think that
Yeah.
barring, some sort of diplo thing happening or Pythium or TNG being distracted by a different war, that they either fight each other next or that they eat Erythia and then fight each other.
Yeah.
But either way, the rest of the world kind of has to do something about that because otherwise, the rest of the world doesn't really matter, right?
Right.
Like whoever is winning that war needs to get stabbed in the back by one or another of the remaining powers if they want to stay in the game.
I mean, there's plenty of people to do it. Vaettiheim can do it, and then Xibalba can do it. Gath can do it.
And
Gath to a
Vaettiheim
much
and
limited degree against TNG.
But definitely against Pan if Pan starts running away with
Right.
things. But yeah, the other thing that I was going to say is that I think that Vaettiheim has a really great grasp of the game state. So he'll be able to actually keep a pretty decent eye on things. And unless, like I mentioned, some diplo thing happens and TNG and Pangaea decide to fight goblins instead, Vaettiheim might be in a position to sway the game one way or another, or even just prevent it from ending by allying against whoever's coming out on top in that war.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Vaettiheim's got a great power curve. So their incentive is to let these guys go against each other, grind down, but then they intervene to keep the game state in balance as they go farther towards the late game. So
I think that should be Vaettiheim's game plan because I think that they outscale everyone except for Xibalba. And Xibalba's research curve is so slow that like their outscale time scale is just very far, far out. So Vaettiheim basically should have no problem stalling out the game. And Xibalba's ability to come up from behind and like become a top tier nation it's going to take them long enough to get there that
Yeah.
Vaettiheim doesn't really need to worry about that right now.
yeah, I think so too. So actually, we have a message from Gap. Let's do that. I was not going to attack the throne 254 this turn, but seeing Arco has evacuated his forces, I will. In case it's a bait and he wants to come back and fight me in patrol, I'm hurrying 110 to prevent double movement. Or I'm hurrying number 10 to prevent double movement. Well, unless he expects it and raises PD or drops something there in the magic phase. If he does that, he'll most likely beat me since my army is in transit and I really need a couple turns to complete some important research and forging. And if he indeed abandons the throne, I am really wondering what's the whole purpose of this war when I just wanted my 2 provinces back. See, this guy's super easy to buy off. Like, why is he giving up? All he has to do is give him the 2 provinces back, even still, and then he's in a 1v1 with Xibalba. Anyway.
Yeah, it is definitely interesting. And their border is small anyways.
Right. We'll see if he has some nasty surprise up his sleeve. P.S. It's turn 45, and I decided to start recruiting gibbers. He. At this point, the Omni-resistant 35 HP bags can hit quite hard and feel good even if costly. It's kind of weird. Normally, at this point is when I stop recruiting stuff and start getting only mages.
Yeah, his bless makes gibbers pretty good throughout the game as like you pointed out, just late game hard hitting guys with, big magic swords. Like I mentioned, I tend to take a much heavier bless with Gath, or with the Drain Gath, I should say. So with that, I'm recruiting gibbers the whole game long.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, this is also, he pointed out that this is only part of his army. So I don't believe that that's all of his mages, especially if you look at the 2 provinces south. Yeah, so one more. Yeah. He's got both enchantresses and crystal sorceresses gathered there.
Right.
So I think, and a Gadol. So I guess he's having them all to sit tight and research for now, which is a little weird, but that's the missing mage support for that army.
Weren't
So
the
he's got at
crystals
least-
here, or were they here? I thought
No,
they were.
he moved them there.
Right. So he wants to bring them to fight. And
Right,
he was
they're
the
sitting on
magic
a
phase
lab.
attack he was talking about. So this did, if there was a multi-phase province move planned, it cut off movement. And he's got this under siege.
Yeah. So the Kinslayer is kind of interesting. That's Kane. That's who it's based on, like the Vibla Kane character.
Oh, okay, cool.
So his shtick is that he's an immortal with blood vengeance, and he actually has a higher blood vengeance than normal. It's 18 versus MR instead
Oh,
of
wow.
whatever the baseline value is. So he's very nasty in that you can kill him pretty easily. Like he's not a super thug or anything, and he's super old. So he actually suffers from terrible combat stats. But
Oh,
when
God.
you kill him, he does a lot of damage to the guy that kills him back.
Huh. That's wild. Very wild. Huh. How about that?
It's the whole Mark of Cain myth.
Yeah, you can put the, what is it? virgin boots or whatever they are, I forget, boots of youth on him, and that'll probably delay the age affliction, kind of how fast that accumulates. But okay, so this is in progress. This does just beg, what is this army gonna do? To kind of close out Arco, he's been raided up here. Basically, this is the vulture permission he's given everyone. Xibalba fails a raid here, losing turns worth of cap onlys.
Yeah, so Xibalban Sacreds, like the generic guard guys, they still hit pretty hard, but they're not really good against mass troops in the same way that Ocelotls are, because they just don't have the attack density.
Right.
And because they don't have the defensive stats or the hit points, you kind of, even like during expansion, you want to use them in conjunction with regular troops.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you're running into a blob of regular troops like he did here, they really don't show up.
Yeah. So this is Ulm's cap, which has been Arco's, but I think it's basically forfeit at this point. But we don't see, we see Xibalba moving out with a bunch of low commitment raids, but we don't see it. Now, most of his Aussies kind of died in the fight that he doesn't have like 300 Aussies sitting around over here, but he's got a lot of these corpse constructs, which are pretty good siege chaff. So I'm kind of surprised we didn't see them roll out in force coming south to start putting Ulm under siege.
Agreed. I think that he should move his army there, that he should recognize that he killed whatever Ulm or whatever Arco has in the north. Right. Just put everything on top of the cap, and you don't need to stay there, right? Like if you're worried that he's going to gateway in something nasty, as long as you have the counters to the super combatants that we've seen, and he should by this point, it only takes like a handful of death mages, then he should have no problem locking down that fort.
Yeah. So that's this front. Over here on Jomen, just a huge pile of Aussies, and then more raiding. So it looks like
those are retreating mages, I believe. That's why they're out there.
What do they do?
They're
a bunch of mind burn spam. So they get landed on by just a few of these guys, and they carry the day. How about that? That's about as good of an outcome as you could expect from two. I wonder, did he do quickness on them? Because that would be kind of cool.
No, I think that's just blessing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a level 1 priest, so he can only do quickness with either a booster or a gem.
Yeah, I was thinking that would be a good thing to cast, though.
If you expect real resistance, then maybe, but if you expect real resistance, you probably would just want to send more guys.
Yeah, that's probably true. One of these guys, probably a swarm caster.
It's interesting that he even went for this. That's
very strange.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a super, if you could cast swarm or something, it'd be great. It's a great use of a nature gem to deny all this income from Xibalba, even if you can't trace it. But
if you win, of course.
Right. So yeah, not a ton of action over here, but there's a huge army piled up inside this fort, so maybe we get to see that.
Well, if you look at what Xibalba has on that fort, though, very importantly, this army finally has mage support. So there's several Kamazoths, those are his big cat mages. He's got a golem, so he's got anti-magic. He's got a Bakub, so he's got weapons of sharpness, and he brought more way up, so he has more nature magic.
Yeah.
So regardless of what the specifics of what Xibalba is going to cast are, this is a proper supported stack now. This isn't just a bunch of Ocelotls that will die to a super combatant.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. So yeah, we'll get to see. And I mean, it'll be interesting if Xibalba takes this, you would think, okay, well, this army now is just going to come over here and take this. And I guess they technically could fly over this, but like this kind of should be Arithia's. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting how this plays out, because like Arithia is not making any moves when they need to. Like they should, I think even still, you put gems on your mages and you come up here as Arithia and take this and get your ass in the lake.
You put gems on your mages, you bring a nature mage, because we know he has pearl mages, like we saw them.
Right.
So yeah, he has the tools to go take that. He just has to go do it.
But that's the point. He needs to go do it. He needs to go do it now, because once Xibalba, the fort's popped, right? Once he storms it, then it's like, I think you want to take this next to Xibalba. And if you do that, then you're kind of getting, like, if you take this as Xibalba, you're kind of giving the middle finger to Arithia, because this was like prime Arithian spoils. But they're not doing anything to take it, so.
Yeah, I think you just talk to Erythia, sort out borders, and then go grab it. And Xibalba also should have no problem grabbing the lake because they have a bunch of amphibious mages.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Barb's raiding as they do.
The gray flags have finally joined the coalition against their oppressor.
That's right. They've been waiting. They've been Arco had just such a vile hatred of the gray flag nations of the world, and now they're finally getting some justice.
I made a mod that turns all the other player flags into gray flags in case you want to play on colorblind mode. But
That's funny. Ooh,
yeah,
let's take a
Vaettiheim's
look at
just
this
doing
guy.
as that's one of their transformed guys.
Yeah,
I assume he's twice born as well. Yeah.
yeah,
That's not quite as good as the grab and swallow guy, but still a very solid chassis because it has all of the it has full slots,
yeah.
which is really valuable for a thug. And you can also cast enlarge on it to be immune to trampling.
Right.
Those
Yeah.
one pads are also really cool because those are basically as cheap as you can make a raider that's going to be reliable against province defense. Actually, I
Who?
guess Vidi goats can do it too.
Wait,
But
what?
yeah,
These guys?
yeah, they're very very cheap thugs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they're stealthy, of course. So, I mean, you can do it with a goat as well, depending on your bless. But the idea here is pretty clear that, like, he wants to grab the free Arco land that's been basically offered to him while spending as few resources as possible.
Yeah. Now, coming to Vaettiheim, they are pinging the inside of Utgard's fort, and we've got the Idol of Beasts, who's the pretender, and a handful, a smattering of mages. But a lot of these Scotty here, strangely enough, it looks like
He doesn't have enough blood slaves for all of them.
I know, but he's casting Communion Slave with Seth Kona rather than making all the Seth Kona masters and using Scotty as blood
Yeah.
slaves. So I don't know.
Yeah, I dislike this.
Yeah. I don't know. And this is enough to gem bait. So yeah, he summoned. Please tell me this guy didn't summon. He summons an imp with this guy in werewolf form. Like, what are you doing, Squeako, man?
Yeah.
Come on, buddy. You talk to
I
me.
mean, I'm not really going to judge. I'm pretty sure he's decided that he's out of the game already.
Yeah, he's hitting in turn. But to be fair, the novelty of playing in the finals probably a little worn off on him by round 3.
Sure. He is the only three-peat finalist.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Vaettiheim had actually mentioned that he was going to do this. I don't know if he put that in the message or not, but the basic plan here is to just do Wailing Winds to try to see like what you can get rid of. And then the goal here is basically to clear the mages protecting the statue and then go in for the statue by itself. It didn't quite work, but he did get a fair amount of this out of the way, including 3 of those werewolves.
Yeah, let's take a look and see who the Wailing Winds caster was again. Who cast it? Wait, this guy? Oh, wait, that was you. No? That was you? Oh,
It's the
this
other
guy.
one on the
Okay,
square.
here we go.
Yeah. It's a white mage.
Oh, yeah.
That was the guy who'd random
The amphitheater.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So like as a plan, I think it's pretty solid, try to clear out as much of the stuff as you can. The problem that he ran into though is he didn't have enough frontline to hold off the angry Gamhams long enough in order to actually let the Wailing Winds do its work and get rid of more of the guys.
Oh, he was flying. I was wondering, I was coming back to check how he disappeared. Once the battle routed, he was flying and just pieced out.
Yeah. He needed either more frontline, like actual units, or more Skella spammers in order to hold the Utgard guys at bay, in order to reliably clear more of the stuff.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, he did see that Squeako's really not doing much scripting on the defense, and he can probably just win that in a straight out fight.
Yeah. So this fort's popped, obviously, since he stormed it. This fort now has Great Eagles on it and is also popped. So we may see them going in here as well. But that will probably be for next turn. Otherwise, I don't think there's too much else to cover this turn. I don't think there was any super hype battles. Just make sure. What was this pain battle here? Oh, taking Pythium stuff. Yeah, we saw this. Yeah, I think that's it for this turn. What are your closing thoughts here?
Closing thoughts are so I mean, Arco's obviously on the way out. I'm hoping that we still get to see two more good battles from them, one with Jomin and one with their southern army. So still some mileage to work with there. Vaettiheim, I really expect to see them kill off the Utgard stuff that they've already got broken, and then break that last fort with their eagles. So Utgard should be out of the game within just a couple turns. Most likely even sooner than Pythium, if I had to guess.
Yep.
Um, Pythium themselves, I don't think that we'll see much more. Um, with the newly resurgent pet Agartha, I'm interested in seeing who they actually fight because they said that they're going to be fighting basically at Pangaea's command, but I don't think that Pangaea necessarily wants to fight TNG yet because their
Right.
border is really tiny and awkward. Um, I mean, they do have like a two front border, but Erythea's kind of in the way. Like you really do want to fight the guy who you have an enormous border with first, which would then widen your border with TNG before you take that war, especially when Erythea uh, kind of is making themselves look like easier pickings,
Yeah.
which would basically leave Agartha just sitting put.
I don't think Agartha will mind that. I think they're going to be. I don't think they really have ambitions of coming back to be a major player in the game. I think they actually
Oh,
just want to
yeah.
do the Nick Knight thing and sit there and watch, and then
I mean,
occasionally get
sure,
called
but
upon.
yeah, but they did agree to be a proper vassal, and they're being given back their cap circle. So they have a little more than just that one province city state to work with.
That's true. I mean, they are definitely and without a doubt in a better position than Nick Knight was. Um,
What I'm excited to see is the one Agarthan army, and just you know, when the time comes and they're called upon to provide
yeah,
service for their liege lord, that they send out their one army, you know, whatever tech they have, and just see what that does.
you
That's
know
what
what would
I'm
be really
interested in.
cool is if this was early age and they like teched up to breaking the seal, and then they
Alas,
cast it
yeah,
and they get just this mega army of umbrals and they just run around like terrorizing the world with it. That would be really funny.
yeah, and can't get that here, but as you pointed out in EA, that's a fun option. And then you also that's also in alt, so it means that you also have Army of Gold for those umbrals. Makes it
Right.
easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, they did get their god back though, so that's
Yeah.
what they've been doing,
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining
calling
me
him back.
for this episode, Ty.
Yeah, this was a quick one.
This was a quick one at 45 minutes. So,
Oh, I guess
viewers,
they're not that quick.
if you made it to the end, appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.